I'm a UX designer by profession, and I love building beautiful and functional UIs. And I think my strength is in the fact that I used to be a developer. So when I propose UI features and components, that most of the time, there are things I know developers can implement, and I think that's what sets me aside mostly. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to try and make it as fun as possible. I shifted the topic a little bit because I felt like it was more important for us to know the basics, like to know a bit of theory that would help you, instead of me just showing you what I had initially thought about the talk. So we're going to do it this way. I'm going to tell you about a principle, a UX principle, and then I give you examples from actual products that are already there in the industry, and then from there we just have questions or in a particular principle. And yeah, I hope we all get to learn and have fun. So this is me. This is not me right now. It could be me. This picture was taken 2 years ago, but I wanted to use pink, this pink in my slides. So I looked for an image that had that particular pink. But yeah, so as I was introduced, I'm a UX designer, and today we're going to go through laws of UX design and principles that would help you when you're working on your project, whether you're a front-end engineer or a UI UX person. These principles are going to help you. So the very first one is my personal favorite. It's called, let me just, give me a second. Yes, aesthetic usability effect. So before I tell you about it, maybe if there's anyone in the session right now who knows a bit about it, you could point that out. Maybe you're going to see it. Aesthetic usability effect. Can someone tell me whatever they know about that particular principle and the importance it plays while building tech products? Anyone? I'll give you an example, right? And then from there, maybe you'll tell me what you think about it. So a very good example would be what's happening right now with WhatsApp, or what happened in the past with WhatsApp and which was this competitor? Signal, right? There was a lot of buzz about WhatsApp having a lot of privacy issues, and people are like, I'm never going to use WhatsApp again. WhatsApp, bye, right? But then, as much as people said they were leaving, they left, they went to Signal. I think they came back to WhatsApp. I never left. I don't know how Signal looks like, but most people say that the UI is not that beautiful. It is functional and has other awesome features compared to WhatsApp, but still people will be inclined to use WhatsApp as opposed to Signal, even though Signal could have better features. So you see people are still sticking to WhatsApp, and there are these other options that are available for them. So why do you think that is happening? Anyone?
I think on a subconscious level, if something looks like prettier or more professional, it's seen as more reliable is one of the factors that goes in there, but also people just like things that look good.
Yes, yes. Thanks, Kate. That is exactly it. By default, if something looks good, you're going to attract more people to use it. And that's why you find developers are being advised, as much as their work is mostly inclined towards making something work. You will make something work, but then people will not use it. You see, you have all these nice features and you're telling people, hey, we have all these, our app can do this and this, but still your conversion rate, it's not adding up, right? The revenue is not increasing because people are simply not interacting in a platform, because people go there, they have cognitive load, they get tired when they're using applications, or they can't pinpoint what exactly is wrong with your product, but they just don't want to be there, right? So that's it. That's what we call the aesthetic usability effect. No matter how many awesome features you have, if your UI is not beautiful, if your UI is not visually appealing, people will not use your product. I almost said at all, but it's not always like completely the case, right? So that's a good example, WhatsApp and Signal. And then another example is what happens with Apple. There are a lot of, you find whenever there's a discussion between iPhones being the best phones, and then Android people usually come and they're like, there's nothing new in iPhone. They're literally not adding new features or anything. But that's the thing the thing that I think iPhone or iOS Apple has managed to identify in their customers that has helped them so that even though Android has all these nice features they keep saying they have, right? First of all, I don't want this to turn into an argument of people saying Android is better and iOS is better, but I'm just pointing done. So you see, iOS from iPhone 6, iPhone 7, like you will not see a lot of changes on those phones, but the minimal aspect that comes, if you're someone who was using iPhone 6 and then you now come and use 11 Pro, chances are you will easily navigate the phone and use it better because you know where everything is. But with Android, this version, something was here. This other version, someone woke up and decided to shift it to the other side. So they're not minimal, I guess, and they don't keep most of their features on the same place. And that makes it a bit hard for them. Okay, people still use Android, but I think that's something that separates iOS users from Android users. iOS users will always know that if iPhone 6 had this, then it will still have it in iPhone 11, which maybe just improved or something like that. So pay close attention to what you're using. And then this one plays a big role in developing a product, for instance. So when you're testing your product during the initial stages, right, you find that if this effect starts to play, you will miss out on important functional issues that you should have handled initially. So for instance, you're testing your product and it's an online grocery where people are supposed to be buying groceries, right? And then instead of you seeing someone struggling to maybe find a product, or you just think that they're not comfortable using it, but then when they're giving their feedback, the only thing they're saying is, I like the color theme, I like the typeface, I like how everything is simple and minimal. But then when they were interacting with their platform, you saw them struggling, literally, you couldn't pinpoint what exactly they were looking for, but you could see from their facial expressions that they were struggling, right? So when this effect plays during the initial stages, it is a bad thing because you will miss out on things that you could have handled initially. So when you're doing user testing, even developers don't usually do it, but if you get to a point where you're doing it, it's good when you're looking at what someone is doing when interacting with their platform, look at what they're doing, and then try and see whether what they're doing reflects what they would say in the end, right? So if you see them struggling, make sure they at least tell you why they're struggling. So don't ask them like, why were you struggling at this point? If most times they wouldn't really tell you why, or they wouldn't even know why. So you could tell them, what was your experience? What challenges did you have, for instance? And then when they're telling you the story, when they're interacting with the platform, you will realize that maybe they could not find a particular item. And if it was an e-commerce site, then obviously you need your products to be found, right? And even if your UI is beautiful, in the end, this effect is going to ruin your product because you wouldn't really grow. In the end result, here's the thing: as much as your UI is beautiful, it gets to a point where people don't want to concentrate on that alone, right? It will get to a point where it's like when you, this is not a good example, but it's like when you're dating someone and the first thing you realize about them is that the person is beautiful, right? You'd want to engage with them and get to know them and things like that. But the more you get to know about them, then you start to realize that they may be not the perfect fit for you, and then you just abandon the relationship altogether. So that's it with products, right? As much as it is beautiful and you will attract a lot of people based on beauty, it will get to a point where now your product needs to work. You cannot hide behind your beauty anymore. Your product simply needs to work. So pay close attention to that while you're building your products, and as developers, maybe read a bit of books on design so that you get to learn a bit about what you could do to improve your UI. The next one is, I don't know how to pronounce this. It's yes.
Do you have any, I don't know if this is in the talk later, but do you have any recommendations on some of your favorite UX and UI books?
That's a good question. For me, I read books, yes, but I don't really like know them offhand. Maybe I could share them with Maureen, and then she could share them with you, or you could reach out on LinkedIn, and I could share links.
Yeah, I mean, maybe for other people's sake, and also you can look at what I've already read. I can post some of the ones I've already read on the topic in the chat. Okay, sounds good. Sorry to interrupt.
Sure, yeah, so maybe, yes. No problem. So if there's a book that you've read about a particular principle I'm mentioning right now, just feel free to type it on the chat section so that we can all just read, right? Yeah. So there's this one, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I think it's the Hootie, the Hootie or something, right? The Hootie threshold. Anyone know anything about it before I continue? Now I'm going back to this other slide. I actually thought it was the Doherty principle. But then just before this call, I decided, let me Google and see how it's pronounced. I saw Doherty or something. So does anyone know anything about that particular principle?
Yeah, I can see Robert has put it on chat. So maybe Robert, would you maybe speak about it?
Somehow I can't see the chat section. Did Zoom change?
I'm
I
assuming.
think when you're presenting, the UI changes so it's harder to find the chat. I think if you go hover up on the top, there's usually a bar. It's not very intuitive.
Okay.
I don't know why they didn't put it at the bottom.
Okay, just let's leave it. So, Robert, I'd like to hear your view on what you think about it.
I don't know this particular effect. The pronunciation in English would generally be Doherty. It's like dough, the stuff you make bread out of, with erty stuck on the end. But the middle GH is not emphasized. So dough, or like dough, Doherty.
Doherty, okay.
Yeah, in terms of books, which I think Maureen may have been referring to, Steve Krug is an excellent introduction to usability and user experience. His book, Don't Make Me Think.
I've read that. It's actually a very nice book.
Rocket Surgery Made Easy is his introduction to usability testing. But I can certainly highly recommend those. If I think of some others, I'll throw them in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
So no one knows this other one. After the way Robert has pronounced it, I actually feel like I shouldn't even just try to pronounce it anymore. I'll mess it up.
No. Practice.
I'll say threshold. Doherty. Let me just say Doherty threshold. My Kenyan people, bear with me. Sorry for the embarrassment. Doherty threshold for now, right? So no one knows about this. So this one is actually very common, but we don't realize that this is just a big name. So basically, for instance, this principle states that the attention span of a user tends to reduce if the time between them giving a command to a computer and the time they get the response increases, right? So you're supposed to keep it at around 400 milliseconds. So if I'm looking for something in your site and then I type enter, I expect to get feedback within 400 milliseconds. If I don't get it, at that time, then my attention will shift, or chances are the more I keep on waiting, once the content already loads, I'll have to now think again, why was I here, right? So to increase the productivity of someone, make sure that the response time is as fast as possible. So, and if that cannot be achieved, most times it can't, right? There are things you can't just solve. So if your app or your site, for instance, has a lot of videos or a lot of images that have to load, what you can do is you can include those skeletons, right? The Android skeletons, I think iOS has it, like where while content is loading, you see like this one. Yes, this ones. You include these ones in your UI. These ones help people to know that the system is working or there's something working in the background so that you just don't keep on wondering what is happening. And if this is not something you can look into, for instance, when you Google and then you find that your internet is lost or just can't find what you're looking for, Google has that animation that allows you to play while you're waiting for feedback or while you're waiting for your connection to be back. That is a way of keeping people to interact with your platform before content loads, right? So another example, and what I have seen is with what you can do as well is with which one? You can include games for people or just amazing animations for people to interact with, or content for people to interact with. For instance, when you order a ride with Uber and it takes time for the ride to come, Uber gives you an opportunity to read about how they calculate the arrival time for the vehicles, right? So this one also, I'm just realizing that this one also touches a different principle, but by Uber giving you option to read about how arrival time is calculated, it reduces anxiety in people, because now, in the past, let me use my example. In the past, when I would order an Uber and then it would say the driver would be there in like 2 minutes, and then it takes more than 2 minutes, I would be like, what the hell? Like that 2 minutes takes longer when you're just waiting and doing nothing, even if it's just 2 minutes, right? But then Uber providing you an opportunity to read about how they calculate. It's called what? Transparency what? I've forgotten the actual term. Operational transparency. Uber giving you an option to see how they are calculating how the arrival time. It makes you feel like they care about the experience and they want you to be part of their journey. So you won't be so mad when you realize the Uber driver took 5 more minutes, because you'll realize, hey, there are a lot of things that go into it and things like that. So that's another way of keeping your users active in your platform. Provide lively animations while they're waiting, gamifications, include games like Google does, or give them options to keep them busy. Human beings are very funny. Even if they would be doing nothing at that particular time, they want to feel like they're very busy, right? That's why if you're waiting for an Uber, and they tell you it's going to take 5 minutes, that time is going to take forever, and you'll be like, why is it not here? And then you'll be looking at your phone all the time. But if they give you an option to do something else at that time, you'll feel like you're busy doing something while your ride is coming. So include games, have operational transparency in your UI so that users can know how things that go into the process of a ride coming, or let's even forget that ride coming. I have remembered an example, right, of something that could also show operational transparency. So there was once this product, let me not say what it was about. Okay, it was an AI model that was supposed to basically respond to users' feedback. Maybe if you're an e-commerce site and then users come to your site, and then users, I'm sorry if I keep on doing like this. I have siblings around and they're just making a lot of noise. So yeah. So if you're an e-commerce site, and then you have the help section where you want now a chatbot to respond to users, right? So sometimes these chatbots are not 100% functional, and they keep on giving users terrible feedback. You ask them, especially if a user comes and then they speak in Swahili, and the chatbot has been designed, the model has been designed to respond in English. So you find someone saying, nataka kiatu, then the chatbot says, we don't have maybe items matching those search terms. Users will be tired and they will leave your platform. But if you give them an option to know that, hey, this is a chatbot responding, make sure as much as possible you're responding in English, or if whatever you're looking for, cannot be found, then change your search terms, things like that. Then it will make your users stick around and try to understand. Even it will be like a game. Now they will now start making jokes about, they will start interacting with the chatbot in a more friendly way, because they figured that the problem is not really that you did not think about the experience. The problem is that you are trying to improve the experience, and the more they keep on using it, the more the model will get better. So that one is one way you could improve your UI, your product, by incorporating operation transparency, by telling your users what you're doing at each given time, so that they know you're actually thinking about the experience. Any question on that before we go to Fitts law? Okay. I cannot see the chat section, so forgive me if I can't see that. So Fitts law. This one, there's something I realized when I started design. There's something called fat finger problem. I'm not sure if it's an actual thing, this particular term, but some people simply have fat thumbs, right? Like the fingers are just a fat finger problem, right? So this law states that for users to achieve the tasks faster, make sure the tap areas are bigger and accessible and somewhere where they can easily reach. That's why you find the next buttons, usually if it's an application, the next button will be positioned at the bottom and they'll be big enough. Like the call to action button will be so obvious with a prominent color. Everything you will know what you're supposed to do at that given time in most applications that have actually considered UX while working on their products. And it being positioned at the bottom, it's usually because your term, the one you're interacting with the product mostly with, is close to it at that point. So that when you're there, you can easily just click next, right? So make it as big as possible, place it somewhere that can easily be accessible. Mostly at the bottom if it's a call to action button and you want your users to like, if it's continue or sign up, those buttons, position them at the bottom of the screen. And then don't use link text as buttons for those ones, because they cannot really, they could be seen, but they wouldn't be as prominent as having an actual container button at that point. So yeah, that is Fitts law. This is an example. So by just looking at this, you wouldn't really know. You would see that this is a link, yes, but it wouldn't be that obvious until it will take you a bit of time for you to realize that it's a button or a link that you could click and interact with. But if you have it like this, it's so obvious. It's like the first thing you're going to see. Yeah, when you come to this site, it's the first thing you're going to see and you're going to click on it. So make your call to action buttons as obvious as possible so that users can find them and be able to interact with them. Then we have the goal gradient effect. Anyone know anything about this? Goal gradient effect.
I can't see anyone.
Okay.
Maybe Kate, do you have an idea of what that is?
I don't know offhand. I guess it would probably be something around as people get to their goal, they want to know their progress. Like if you're filling out a form and you don't know how long it is, you might be towards the end, but if you don't know that, you might quit. That's my best guess.
Yes, that's actually it. So I'm going to start with an actual example of a product I worked with before we got to the theory of it. So there was a time I was doing a UX audit. So UX audit is basically, so you get a client or a company coming to you and saying, would like you to do a redesign of our platform. So you have to look at what is already existing, and then you try and figure out users' pain points and how you can improve the UI, basically. So it was a data collection tool in a way. And I like saying that one thing that makes me, I don't want to say a good designer, but one thing that helps me as a designer is that, this is tricky, I don't want to say I'm lazy, but we could call me lazy, right? The fact that I'm lazy helps me as a designer. So when I was doing the audit, I was going through the app. And when I was doing that, I filled the first form and I got tired. Then I got to the next, then I clicked next, I filled it, and then I got to the third. I didn't know to what extent I was going to keep on doing that. Then I was like, no way, I'm not going to, no. Now this story is what gave me the tender to get the client. It was a consultancy gig. So like they tell you, they say the problem they have, and then people come and bid, and then the best bidder gets the project. So I identified this problem as the first problem, and it was like the most obvious problem that this particular company was looking to solve. They didn't know what exactly they wanted to solve, but because I was able to pinpoint it initially, only that one principle helped me to get the client, right? So I got tired of filling the form, and I was like, I can't keep on filling this. I don't know how far I have to go, right? So I started writing my proposal, and I was like, because of this principle, it says that users are more inclined to use your platform and stick around if they know the end result. They don't want to keep on, for instance, the form, there was another form that had like up to 20 screens you had to interact with before you get to the finish button, right? So users would like to know whether there are 20 steps or 3 steps, right? Them knowing will allow them to know, do they have time at that particular point, right? Or they don't. If they have time, then they will keep on filling and filling because they already know where they're going. But then you're just telling them to like go on a goose chase. It's like, let me use this example. It's a funny one I just thought of. It's like how God told Abraham. I'm sorry for those who are not religious. I just think this is a funny thing to say. It's like how God told Abraham. Was it Abraham? Now I'm going to embarrass myself. Is Abraham the one who was told to pack up and go where he didn't know where he was going? Hopefully, I hope he's the one, right? So it's like your app is telling people to just keep on going. You'll get there. Keep on going. People don't have time for that, right? Tell them where they're going. You're not God to tell people to just keep on going, keep on going. Try as much as possible to tell people this is the end goal. These are the steps where you are. By telling them that, people have more reasons to stick around because they know where they're going, they know where they are at that particular point. And also, you could also improve the conversion rates of your clients or potential users if you include games. That you tell people, if you buy products up to this point, you will get a free hood, right? A free hoodie, or you'd get discount worth 20 USD. So the more they keep on purchasing, they see they're at this point. Trust me, when they get too close to the goal, like when they're getting to, if you have told them if they buy goods worth 100 USD, they get a discount worth 20 USD, right? So when they get to 80, is it 80? Yeah. Yeah, is it 80? Yeah. When they get to 80 USD, you will find them buying now more clothes just so they can get the discount of 20 USD. So that is what this principle talks about. Goal gradient effect. The tendency to approach or achieve a goal increases with proximity to the goal. So give your users initiatives, like encourage them to get to the end goal by showing them where they are at each particular point. Use progressing indicators even on the splash screens, for instance. Give people rewards when they accomplish a task in your product. How else? Yeah, activity tracking is one thing again. Now, this is another example of an actual product that exists, right? There was a time I wanted to get serious with walking for exercises. Some of us were built differently. I really tried, even if I paid for those fitness platforms, it didn't work. So anyway, I paid for an application. It was supposed to remind me to walk every day in the morning. And then the first time I walked 15 kilometers, the second time I walked 10 kilometers, the third time I walked 9 kilometers. So that was a reduction. And then I got tired. I was like, it's Corona. I'm not really going anywhere. No one will see that I had the wrong reasons when I wanted to lose weight at that time. I had the wrong reasons. That was why I wasn't motivated enough to use the app longer or something, right? So when I got to, now after the third day, I just stopped walking, right? And then I got a prompt. The prompt, I had set a goal and I had said, I want to be walking 15 kilometers every single day. Now, after a week, I was lost for a week, the app prompted me and said, hey, we've seen that you haven't been working for a while. Would you like to set your goals to something you can achieve, right? So you're giving your users the opportunity to change their mind by now giving them an option to choose something that works for them. Maybe I thought for them, they felt like at that particular time, I thought 15 kilometers was manageable, but then when you start working towards a goal, you feel like it's too much pressure. So them giving me an option to reduce the number of kilometers to walk was their way of saying, hey, we're going to use the goal gradient effect on you. We are going to help you to set your goals to something you can achieve. And then by doing that, I could start interacting with the app. I did not start interacting with the app, but it's a good thing. It actually shows me that they thought about the experience and what they wanted to offer to their clients. So yeah, thumbs up for them. So any question up to that point? I wonder what people are saying. These are like 17 chats here. Is there any question, Maureen?
Yeah, I was just about to say that. So there's one question from Robert. It's not question as such, but an insight about standard UX textbook. So maybe Robert, would you please give some limelight on that?
Sure. I still have a bunch of textbooks from my UX master's degree. Some of the ones that really stood out for me were Understanding Your Users by Courage and Baxter, Observing the User Experience by Kuniavsky. There's one I'm personally fond of. It's a little edited collection of user research techniques, which covers a variety of ways of doing things, called Design Research, edited by Brenda Laurel. And then there are two really excellent information architecture books, Christina Wadka's and the classic Polar Bear book by Rosenfeld and Morville from O'Reilly. Also, I'll mention one accessibility book, which is my current passion, which is A Web for Everyone by Horton and Quisenberry. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that one right. Also, I'll second the earlier recommendation for Don Norman's Design of Everyday Things. That's an excellent book.
Thank you. I wish you were sharing that on the chat section. I feel like
yeah, he has already.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Robert.
No problem.
Yeah,
I love books.
There was a point. Sorry. Also, there was a point where you were mentioning Abraham. So Robert was trying to correct you.
No, I was wrong. It was the story of Abraham that always sticks out to me is when he was apparently asked to sacrifice his son Isaac. But you're quite right. He did lead people to form the nation of Canaan.
Yes. So Abraham is the one who was told to go. So don't make your users be like, go on goose chase. No, hey, I'm not. Let's just leave that topic. I'm a Christian and I believe in God. So let's leave that topic.
Also, this one I haven't read, but I added it to the chat, the Next Billion Users, Digital Life Beyond the West, because a lot of design books are very focused on a Western perspective. And especially if you're dealing with, if you're working with users that are dealing on like flip phones or not super technology literate, that could be an important thing, within context.
Could you come again, please? Could you come again? There's something you've said that I think it's interesting. Could you come again, please?
Yeah, did the book or my comment on it?
The book.
Yeah, the book is called The Next Billion Users, Digital Life Beyond the West. It's on my list to read. I've started and it looks really good. I haven't read it all, so I can't fully recommend it. There's also, I forget her name, I can find it. There's one researcher that I follow that actually she's actually from the US, but she does a lot of research in Kenya and I think a little bit of South Africa on people using flip phones and the usability there, which is an area that is very underserved, and people that have that don't speak English is particularly because like if you don't speak English or even Swahili, like accessibility is a huge problem on a lot of these flip phones. I'll find her work. I have it somewhere. She's really nice too. I reached out to her once, and yeah, she's really friendly and cool person. But let me find that.
Yeah, that's nice. I don't know how I'll get access to all these things being shared on the chat. So Maureen, please just bookmark them somewhere and share them with me later on. I like what you've said, Kate. And that one, let me give you an example, right? They're called, it's kind of a topic called designing for underserved communities. It's an entirely big topic, like we wouldn't finish it right now. So as much as the world is developing and you feel like everyone has smartphones and all that, no way. There are places, interior places, even in Kenya, not even in Kenya, right? Where people have never seen a smartphone still. And so when you're saying you're designing a platform, for instance, and you're saying that it's similar to this one, yes, it's similar to that. And it's very good that you're bringing the similarity so that people can be able to interact with your product. But it gets to a point where similarity doesn't make sense to some people who haven't interacted with any form of digital application, right? So a good example is there was a time I was working on a project, and then I positioned a search button. You see how a search button is just something very obvious. You would think it is obvious and everyone would know what a search icon looks like. So I was doing user research, and then I got the opportunity to travel to an interior place to sample the people who are supposed to use the product. And as they were interacting with sorry about that. And as they were interacting with the product, someone said, "What is this?" So they were pointing to the icon. I had done paper prototypes. So basically what that is you do rough sketches of what you are planning to implement, and then you go to a person and ask them, how does this UI look like? Does it make sense to you? Would it solve your problem? And then when they were interacting with it, someone just asked, "What is this?" And I was like, at that point, you're trying to wonder what you would use differently, because really, who can tell me how a search icon would look different? Yeah, maybe someone in the chat section would try and tell me what I could have used instead of a search icon. Because I really felt like sometimes when now people had a lot of forms, I thought it was nice for them to now have a search option to search through the form so that they don't have to scroll through it. But then a particular user did not know how a search icon looks like. So that was a problem. And then this particular organization, the problem is that they were going to buy fonts for some of their users. Actually, all their agents, they were going to buy fonts for them because some of them didn't have fonts. So as I was carrying out that research, I realized someone didn't know how a search icon looked like. Yeah. So if someone knows how they could have handled that particular design problem, kindly unmute yourself and tell me. I'm interested to know.
Yeah, we have some insight from Collins.
Okay.
He has a suggestion.
Mm-hmm. I can't see the suggestion.
Collins, please go ahead.
No, so I was just suggesting that maybe like on the search input, you add a placeholder, and then on the button, you could also add a tooltip text, such that whenever it displays this few content. Yeah.
That's the thing, though. It actually had a placeholder. The search that section had a placeholder, and they could. Another problem is that these are interior places, and now they didn't know how to read most of them. So the UI was supposed to be the first thing I thought of, and this one boils down to close to something what Kate said, is how to design for this particular group of people. You're supposed, how it should be, you should make it a voice-oriented UI as opposed to having people to type. So based on research and a couple of articles I was reading, it says that people in remote areas are most likely to interact with your platform if they're allowed to speak out things as opposed to texting. They're just scared of texting. They feel like they can break something. And a good example is your grandmother. If your grandmother is, God, just give me a second. So for instance, if your grandmother, sorry about that, if your grandmother is in the interior places, the villages, How many times does she text you? Or even your cousins who are in the villages, how many times do they text you? Most times you'll find that the interaction between you and the people in interior places is through calls. So they're more comfortable talking as opposed to typing, because when it comes to typing, they now have to start figuring out how to pronounce things and things like that. But if you're giving them the option to speak things, you realize they're more inclined to use your application. But then most platforms and companies don't really invest in building products that are voice oriented, because I guess the tech implication that goes into it, and also the budgeting and things like that. So that's why you end up building products that will not really scale to those regions, because hey, people don't read English, they find it hard to read English in those places, and yeah, things like that. So anyone else had a suggestion? Or
yeah, I don't have a good suggestion.
Yes.
But I was gonna say, save icon is a very similar thing. Like, it's still a floppy disk, and like there's like barely anyone's using a floppy disk, right? But like that's the common one used in a lot of UIs. And so there's some things that are just there, and a lot of people suggest icons as a way to just deal with every literacy problem, and I don't think that's accurate.
Yes.
Because yeah, the same icon in two different cultures might mean something different. Yeah, like for a lot of like Americans, sunshine is like happiness almost. But if you're from like the interior or something in Kenya, you might think of drought, like, you know, like you could just have a very different perception. The same thing. And then rain is kind of sadness in American culture. And that's like, if it rains on your wedding day in a Kenyan culture, that's very good luck. Like,
yeah,
you know, it's just different.
That brings me to another point, Kate. I think are you a designer or a researcher or a developer? I'm curious.
Sorry, I just took a bite of my apple. So I used to work at a place called Group Lens as a researcher. I have 2 papers, but today I mostly work as a software engineer. But I don't know, a lot of the freelance work I do, they kind of expect you to just like do all the design and everything. They're like, oh, I need code made, I should hire a programmer. And I kind of push them to get a UX or UI person, but it doesn't always happen. So I end up doing a lot of that work as well.
Yeah, I think you're pretty good. You qualify to call yourself a full stack.
Thank you. I'm learning. There was some of the, like, I think the first one, I wasn't familiar with, so I'm learning things here. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So another thing that Kate said is about the icons. I'll give you an example from. I like giving like actual examples from things I've worked on. So there was this time we're building an application, and then I wasn't building anything. I'm a designer. I was designing an application. And then so we get to users, and then it was a book. So we were telling them to keep their record in that particular book. So basically, users were just supposed to click on that book, and then it will show them a record of all the clients they have had, right? A user asked me, what is that? That is a very good question, because it was a book, but by him asking what that icon meant, it meant that it wasn't something he could relate to. So what happened? We ended up taking a picture of the book they were manually using. So initially, they were using a system where they would have the book was yellow, so they use a yellow book. But so they had a book, and they're basically supposed to write down all their clients, the name of the client, when they purchased the product, and whether they have paid, something like that. So they manually did that. So this platform was supposed to help them to have it digitally on their phones, right? So, and you were just telling them, it was like, you have the splash, and then from the splash, you just have a book. And then from that book, click on it, it shows you the record, right? So the user asked me what was that. And then from that, we decided to replace that particular book with this one. No, it wasn't this particular one, but we just took an image of the book exactly, and then we now positioned it as an icon. And then from that point, when it went back to the user, he was like, sorry, let me just say it in Swahili, then I'll translate it in English. So when you took it back to the user was like, ile kitabu tunatumianga, umeiweka kwa simu, unaona? So like the user said, this is the book we usually use in the past. Now we have it on phone, and we could see that he lit up because he understood now what the book meant. So yeah, can't remember what that point was. Yeah, that point was about the icon thing. Icons, as much as you would think they're obvious, when we keep on saying use obvious icons and things like that, to some people, when you start designing for underserved communities, some things are just simply not obvious. So yeah, it takes you back to the drawing board and you get to learn a lot of things. And it's actually very interesting. The research bit of design is interesting.
Yeah, thank you for that. There was also another comment by Robert. So he was mentioning that I can't give an alternative for such icon, but there was a huge issue between US shopping cart icons and Europe and UK shopping basket icons. So maybe Robert, would you briefly maybe share something about that?
Well, in the United States, we push shopping carts with wheels through stores. We have big carts, we put big things in them, we push them around the store. In Europe, things are, well, smaller. You go to the store more frequently, you're buying less stuff, and they use baskets. We have baskets here, and if someone's just picking up a few things, they'll use a basket. But the icons that translated onto e-commerce stores were like totally different, and they didn't understand each other. You know, people go to Amazon and go, "What's that?" in Europe. And eventually, I think they ended up either altering the US icons. Some here, like I think Chewy now use a shopping basket. But others, I expect, have particularized it for the different, basically internationalized it. And there was a book I mentioned in the chat earlier, which discusses this very kind of thing, the culturally customized website by Singh and Paria. And it's a tough book to read because they use really tiny type, but it covers ideas like the different emotional impacts different colors have in different nations, and really gets you thinking about not everyone's like me. I like the book for that.
I like what you've said, and it actually makes sense because even when you look at other products like Uber, before they start hitting a market, like if they're going to India, you would find them doing actual research in India, trying to understand the people and their way of life and what would influence them to use Uber, because the experience of people in India would be different from those in the USA. And I've also seen what you've mentioned about icons being changed. Maybe I haven't really, I can't say about the cat one, I haven't noticed that, but there was a time I was trying to shop for something online, and then I shifted my region to now Kenya, Africa, and my experience changed, and I was like, this is awesome. It actually means that they thought about me, a user from Africa, and decided to now build an experience around me. And obviously that made me buy more, because if they kept on keeping the experience and keeping the currency in dollars or euros, it was good, but I had to struggle a lot to now start converting those things. But when the experience was changed to something I could relate to, I loved it and I kept on buying. So yeah, design is not, it's a lot of things go into design, and I actually love how this session has gone, a lot of discussion back and forth. And yeah, design, you would find the more you keep on designing, the things you thought made sense. You need, most designers when they come in, they feel like the only thing they would be required to do is to make pixel perfect UIs. And then they come in and then they're told to go and do research. It's by choice. You can, not really by choice, but it's the interesting bit about design for me is doing research, understanding how users think, and then using that knowledge to now build experiences that people will appreciate. So if you're a designer or a developer, value design. There's a lot of, let me give you an example of something. This is the last example before I move to the last slide. So let's look at Facebook. I realized something when I was going through a lot of Dribble and Behance designs. So I saw that people were coming up with these concepts where required people are required to now, they were splitting the sections of the mobile applications, splitting them into, for instance, if it was a grocery shop, you'd find this section is for for vegetables, and then another section beneath it is for cereals, and then another section is for fruits, right? And then now people were required to scroll like this. You're scrolling like this, like vertically. This is vertically, right? Vertically, which was good. But then I started looking at applications that already exist. And I was like, why is it that Facebook has scrolling horizontally like this? And then why is Instagram, Instagram as well, and Twitter and LinkedIn, why do they have horizontal scrolling and not vertical scrolling? I mean, vertical scrolling is good. It allows you to see all the products that are available, and then you now just scroll to the sections that are of something you're looking for. But then after doing research, I realized that Facebook actually did research, and according to their research, it turns out that users are more inclined to stick on a platform that allows them to scroll horizontally as opposed to scrolling vertically. Yeah, I didn't finish the particular article. It was a bit lengthy, but see, if I didn't do the research, I would have designed a concept and then made split the section into those sections and getting people to scroll vertically. Being original is good. Trying to do things differently from how it has traditionally been done is good. But then if you're doing it without actual research, and if your company is not paying for research, then leverage on companies that spend a lot of money on research. Facebook has spent a lot of money on research, and if they're telling you horizontally scrolling works best, and it gets, I guess it's simply because people just, it's easy to just do this as opposed to doing this. Research is weird, and it's nice and interesting. So yeah, do your research before implementing concepts so that you get to understand people, because people at the end of the day, people are going to use your products. And if you're not building a product that people can use, then don't build it, I guess, or just, I don't know, just do your research. Research is very important. And you'll come to appreciate it when you start working on projects. I don't know why it's not on next. Yeah, this one was just basically showing the progress, the goal gradient effect. Now we look at social proof. This is very obvious. I don't really need to show you an example, but still you would find products where people are not showing the social proof. They're not showing other people who have used the product. Most times, me as a user, I wouldn't buy a product unless I have seen other people buying it or someone else with it, or unless someone says something good about it. So before I buy a product or anyone, they will go to a site and then they'll just look at the reviews, and then based on that, they buy a product. And then as much as possible, again, if you're in a position to have a specialist to speak about your product, that one works magic. It's like Colgate, right? You see how, I hope everyone knows what Colgate is. So you see how Colgate gets Sensodyne toothpaste. You see how they say, I'm a doctor, or I don't know what, like they get a professional to talk about their product, and then you just feel like, yeah, this thing works, right? Because a professional has talked about it. So if get someone more experienced in that particular line, if it's an e-commerce site, maybe get someone who is good at well, I don't know which specialist could be there. No, if let's say you're building a product for techies to use and maybe help them to be productive and things like that, get a seasoned developer, or just a developer, to talk about how that platform has helped them as developers. And then more and more people will come in. So yeah, that's all I had. If there are any questions, we welcome them right now. We have like 3 minutes. So I hand it over to Maureen so that we get the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Vuyanzi, for the wonderful presentation. It was very interactive. So we have on the topic about the icons, we had a recommendation from Benson Muchuki. So maybe Benson, would you like to talk about this briefly? He was mentioning on a developer perspective.
As developers, though, if you're working with the designer, it is the designer's work to provide you with the icons. So you guys have it easy. And if they don't provide the icons, tell them it's their work.
Yeah, so Benson, are you able to speak about it? Or maybe I can just read what he mentioned. So he was saying that suggestion.
Okay, I wanted to suggest that in cases that the icons are similar, one can use the position, like location of a person's app to choose on appropriate icons, UI concepts, and
I didn't really get that.
Yeah, so probably is in a noisy place, so I'll just read it. So he was suggesting that you can use the tooltips to explain the icon to the user the way Flutter does. Then he also mentioned that on a developer perspective, one can use the location of a user to choose appropriate icons and other UI concepts. So what do you have to say about that?
I love the idea, and as I said, I haven't really experienced Kenyan products changing the experience basing on where the user is. I haven't seen that. I would love to see that, but I haven't really seen that. So the idea works in the perfect scenario, but right now I haven't seen that a lot. I don't know what we are supposed to do so that companies start investing money and resources to building products that can now be accessible to different people by changing the experience for different people. I haven't seen that in Kenya. I don't want to lie. Unless there's a product that someone has interacted with, a Kenyan product that someone has interacted with that offers those amazing features, like they think about their users. But what I have seen, I love that the SSD versions, the versions where now those ones who don't have smartphones can now interact with even with those the dial mobile phones. What are they called? Those ones, right? Those ones work. But Safaricom has actually, I love what they've done because that is one product that can even be used by people in the villages. So maybe if products start adopting what they're doing, that would really help. Because if you know, there's something you've said, Maureen, where you attach an icon with explanation about what the icon is, right? What happens when people just simply can't read in English? That is a good thing that would work for people who can read in English, but assuming they can't read in English.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing that Kate has mentioned, that tooltips are helpful but not great for low literacy context.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So far I'm just getting thank you messages for the session. So probably those mentioning that, Okola, probably would you like to mention anything or just ask anything in general? Okola Imali. Looks like he's not in a position to speak. Veronica Wambui. Are you in a position to speak? I can see you thanking Glorious for the session.
I finally found it, just when I don't need it anymore.
Yeah. And also from Jacqueline Cheptanui, maybe anything you'd like to say about the session or any question. There was somebody from Akira Chicks Learning UX UI. Maybe would you like to mention anything about this or any questions in general?
I just like to appreciate the session. I've learned a lot since already I'm a beginner, but I gained a lot of things which I'll put into practice once I get into the field. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Veronica. I'm glad you loved the session.
Yeah, thank you, Veronica. We have lots of thank you messages from people. Yeah, so Jane Waitara is asking, I don't know if it's a comment or a question. It's also easier to implement tooltips on web since you trigger the Hoover effect, but in the mobile, it might it might be a challenge for users to know what to trigger. So maybe Jen, would you like to comment about this? Oh yeah, she's saying she's in a noisy place. Yeah, but well, Glorious, would you like to mention or maybe comment about that Jen's text or suggestion?
Yeah, I really wouldn't. I don't have like a lot of experience with tooltip, so really I don't. No, I can't comment about it. Maybe if there's someone else who knows more about it. I just feel like on mobile, the tooltip would definitely not work most times. Because if I look at my interactions, I rarely hover on top of an icon to see what it does, you know. But on web, I would definitely do that. But on mobile, not really.
Yeah,
I
I can
concur
see.
completely with that. One thing I have seen are onboarding tips. When the first time you hit a screen, it'll pick out something, highlight it, stick some graphics around it with some explanatory text. It's an onboarding technique which can work reasonably well, but tends to get in people's way also. So it's you want to use it very delicately.
Yes, I totally agree with that as well.
Yeah, and just like going off that point, if they're having, so a lot of people with low tech literacy also might have, yeah, low English skills in general. So if you're just explaining it all in English, that's not really helpful. You know,
Yeah,
depends on the population.
Let me be completely clear. I totally support internationalizing applications and using the local language. It's a thing I beat into every engineer I work with, because you've got to build that. Even in monocultures, or what are generally perceived as large monocultures like the United States, 25% of our population are not native English speakers.
Mm-hmm.
And we're actually projected to be a majority Spanish-speaking nation by 2050. So depending on the audience you're dealing with, you may be forced into the situation of dealing with multilingual much earlier than anyone expects.
Yeah, and that kind of brings
that.
up.
You can go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, and that brings a point too. I think there was a thing about localizing just based on location. You can have two people next to each other, one that prefers Spanish and one that prefers their content in English. So yeah, phones and laptops, usually you can set your settings. Same thing with most, you know, you can set that settings in browsers, etc. But yeah, it depends, right? Like there's based on location, but there's other settings you can base that off of that might be more helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I was just thinking, what if during the onboarding of a product, for instance, you ask your users which language they're more comfortable in? So now at that point, you're trying to think of everyone, but then we're like 47 tribes. Are you going to consider all those languages? And are you going to do translations for all those languages? And then again, you start thinking about when translating, even when you're translating English to Kiswahili, it's not usually 100%. You'll find a word meaning something and meaning something totally different. So the models that would be doing translation now, it boils down to the developers. How good will the models be? Because it will get to a point where we are trying to help, and then when you're translating, you end up abusing someone without knowing. So there are really a lot of issues that tech cannot really handle right now, but we hopefully will get to a point where all our problems will be solved. Not all, but because I'm sure we'll solve one and others will just come. Yeah, but interesting topic. Update.
Yeah, I think Facebook is an interesting example where you think they would be better and they're not. Like if you switch your phone to, or if you switch your Facebook settings to Swahili, so it has the like button be penda, which I guess is fine, sorta. It's like and love, right? But then they have to figure out something else for the heart, so they do, I think, upendo or something, which is like the idea of love, not really the action as far as I'm concerned, and like as far as I'm aware. And like you look at their reaction descriptions and they're just like kind of imply different things in the American or like the US American or that version, right? The English version. So if people have different perceptions on what the reactions mean, that can cause problems. But yeah, I think like, I forget the word they use for comments, but was more like opinions in Swahili. I was looking at it. And it's like, but I also don't know the word in Swahili for like a comment section. So I have no idea.
You are making me laugh so hard. There are incredible subtleties to internationalization. One of the traps I fell into once a very long time ago was combining translations of what is the same word in English and assuming it will translate into the same word or phrase in a foreign language. And it won't, because what we will use one word in English possibly for multiple different meanings, or things which in other cultures translate into multiple different meanings and different words for them. And it's all in the context, so you almost need a separate translation string for each fragment of text on every screen in order for the translators to correctly do their job of translating these pieces in context. It's a heck of a job. And I've certainly seen some professional, mind you, professional translators pull completely boneheaded funny things. You just have to rely on the users to tell you, you know, that didn't work. Please fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Robert, for that insight. So I can see Collins Juma was asking something. So probably we can take his question, then one more last question, then we'll call it a day. So Collins is asking, could you shed some light on atomic design principle in UI UX? He was doing some research about it and we didn't figure it out.
Atomic design principles?
Yes.
Is it that he's asking about design guidelines, or like how Material.io has guidelines to help both designers and developers? Is that what he's trying to ask?
Maybe
there are very many guidelines. Like Apple has their own, and if you're going for minimalism, check out Apple. And then for Google, they have also very nice components. So you can be able to, when you're designing, you at least know how the end result will look like. And then the code is also available for all the components. Also, I know of Atlassian. I also know of, which one again do I know? I know of Fluent. Fluent is one that is not really known that much, but that one is by Microsoft. I think it's also pretty cool. So Microsoft has, like, a lot of companies are coming up with and sharing their design guidelines so as to help designers to like collaborate better with developers, because yeah, they show you this component would look like this, and then you now have the option to shift to the code mode and they show you the code for that particular feature. So yeah, there are very many, they're different. Atomic, maybe I've just seen it. I haven't really used it, so I really can't say much about it. I don't know if I've answered him. I don't think so.
Yeah, so maybe Collins, would you shed some light about your question? Yeah, I can't hear you, but you are a bit low.
Sorry for that. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
We can hear you with
Thank you. So I think Robert has also answered it on the chat. Thank you for the insight. Or maybe just another question to Glorious. So like maybe during your, when you're building a product or designing a product, I'm just following some of the SDLC principle, SDLC cycle, software development life cycle. So like you have to do the sketch and then low fidelity designs, high fidelity designs, and then finally maybe an interactive design so that now you can ship it to the developer to translate it now, or rather to implement it via coding. So at what point do you feel like your design is ready and you can now give it to developers? Maybe could you just share with us?
Even when you give it to developers, you'll still have to make iterations, because at some point they would start having issues about maybe the code becoming buggy and things like that. So you have to now iterate even after giving developers. So design doesn't necessarily even end by giving developers. What I've noticed is we could work on a team, and then mostly for most of the teams I've worked with, I would be like the solo designer, and then I would have the developer. So I'd have a lot of developers around me, and me being a designer, I have to do all the design work. Even when I do a handover, it gets to a point where I would still iterate. Like for instance, there was a time when I was still, I would say, new to design. I was designing an application, and then the font size I used was too small. So after the site was implemented, I felt like the text was too small. So at that time, I had to like go back and change the sizes to something that was no more usable. It could work, but I felt like some people would struggle like to see most of the content, right? So we had to iterate at that point as well. So design really doesn't end after giving a developer. As a developer, if once a handover has been done to you and you feel like some changes should be made, you're more than allowed to reach out to your designer to make the changes. Yeah, so it never ends at the handover stage. That's like saying we have done all the user testings. Now, developer, you can start, but then even as you're working on it, we can still make changes at that point. And even after you've rolled out a product, you could think that a feature would work, right? After you've done it. You know, when you're doing research, you're doing it with a sample of potential users, right? But then when you now like roll out the product to other people, you now start realizing other things, or you start realizing as much as people love this particular feature, it's not really working well, so you have to iterate again. At that point, now a designer comes in again, and you have to repeat the process again. You have to like redesign and things like that.
Yeah, that's a great insight. So I can see so many people are so excited about this UI UX topic. So maybe I would suggest for another session, maybe later towards the end of the year, on another topic just within the UX UI, because I feel like the session was sweet, but people are still thirsty of the knowledge. Yeah, thank you. So I'll hand it over to Gloria. So maybe you can say your last words, then we can end it here.
I don't really have anything to say. I just want to say thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed the session. I enjoyed myself, and thank you for keeping the session as lively as possible. I'm a very talkative person, and before the session started, I was like, what would I be telling developers really? I hope I don't bore them to death. And yeah, I've really had fun. The audience has been amazing, and I would be more than happy to come back again towards the end of the year, or yeah, when you invite me. So thanks for having me, and thank you everyone for listening to me yapping and whatever I was saying. So yeah, I had fun. I hope you did as well. And
Yeah.
I would tell you this, even as a developer, I believe for you to really set yourself apart, you really have to read a lot of things. Because interestingly, see Kate and Robert, I don't know if Robert is a designer or a developer, I don't know what he is, but having knowledge about all these things helps you when you're now, it helps you when you're trying to tell people you have value and you have something to add to the table and things like that. So just love books, love articles, just keep reading. And yeah, you don't necessarily have to be a designer for you to know design principles. You can just read the articles for fun, and in the end you would be building products that would work best for your company, and yeah, you would love it. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Glorias, and thank you everyone for joining. So see you in the next session. Have a great evening and a great morning for Robert. Yeah, bye everyone.
Bye.